Chapter 1101 Pest Control Team. That night, Gao Tianwu and his brothers had a hearty meal. Although they had worked hard all day and were beaten by the rebellious villagers, Gao Tianwu and Xiaoguang were both extraordinary people and recovered quickly. The other brothers had also gone through countless trials and tribulations after the end of the world and were physically strong, so they were not so easily defeated. Gao Tianwu lit a fire to keep the brothers warm, and as the temperature rose, everyone felt much better. The frog didn't seem to like the fire very much, so it ran to a bed far away and fell asleep. After all, frogs also need to hibernate. If it's happy, it can sleep for several months. So even if it doesn't eat or drink for several months, it won't starve to death. Gao Tianwu discussed with his brothers, "I don't plan to stay in Gaoyuan village. This time, we must do our best to take over Mr. Zhang's work. As long as we do a good job, we can follow Mr. Zhang and seek a good future in the future." Xiaoguang said coldly with a gloomy face, "I won't let those ungrateful villains go. Just a few hours ago, he was stripped naked and almost thrown into boiling water and cooked like a pig." Crack. He exerted force on his hand, broke a piece of firewood, and threw it into the fire. The faces of the other brothers were also fierce. They were all young and strong, at the age of passion. In order to protect their brothers and the village, they could fight for their lives. But being betrayed by the people they protected made them furious. Xiaoguang looked at Gao Tianwu. "Brother Xiao, kill all those ungrateful bastards." The others also looked at Gao Tianwu, waiting for him to speak. As long as Gao Tianwu said a word, they would start tomorrow. Gao Tianwu frowned. They grew up in the village since they were young. Which of these villagers is not familiar with each other? Many of them are relatives of the same clan. He thought for a while and added a piece of firewood to the fire. "Don't go too far. Most of them are just following the trend today and are coerced by Meng Chuan and others." Then he raised his head, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. "But none of those who attacked us brothers today are innocent. Those guys must die." Everyone nodded and agreed with Gao Tianwu's statement. At this time, there was a knock on the door outside the house. The brothers looked outside with gloomy faces. "Who?" An old voice came from outside the door. "Xiao Wu, Xiaoguang, it's me, Fourth Grandpa." Fourth Grandpa is an elder in Gaoyuan village. Most people in Gaoyuan village have the surname Gao, so seniority is more serious. Gao Tianwu didn't say anything. Xiaoguang stood up and walked over to open the door. Then he saw Fourth Grandpa with several relatives of the Gao family, looking at them nervously and flatteringly. "Xiaoguang, are you okay? Those damned beasts actually wanted to do that to you. They deserve to die. But we are completely unaware of this matter. Please don't misunderstand." Xiaoguang was tall and strong, looking down at the people in front of him. He still remembered that among the Gao family members behind Fourth Grandpa, 2 of them were the most clamorous at the time, and they wanted to throw him into boiling water and cook him and share the meat. Xiaoguang's mouth was crooked. "Don't worry, we are all family members. How can I misunderstand you?" When Fourth Grandpa and others heard this, their hearts were relieved. Yes, we are all family. Unlike that surnamed Meng, he is a bad embryo. Whatever you do in the future, we will fully support you." Several people complimented, and then left with peace of mind. They didn't notice that Xiaoguang showed a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Xiaoguang closed the door and returned to the fire, picked up a roasted leg of lamb, and gnawed it hard. Several brothers nearby asked in confusion, "Xiaoguang, why are you so polite to them? I remember that ere we came over and kicked you a few times." Xiaoguang smiled, with a sinister look in his eyes. "We're still injured, so don't quarrel with them at this time. When we have a good rest, we will take revenge, and no one will escape." Everyone just understood, and immediately showed meaningful smiles on their faces. Later, other families came one after another, swearing that they had no involvement in this matter. Gao Tianwu and others followed suit and appeased them first. At night, they did not dare to sleep all, but arranged people to be on duty in turns. On the second day, the Gao brothers had rested, and they had eaten and drunk enough, so they were almost recovered. Gao Tianwu took out a steel wine pot from his pocket, gulped and drank 2 mouthfuls for himself, and then passed it to Xiaoguang one by one. After everyone finished drinking, Gao Tianwu closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he was already resolute, without a trace of hesitation. Let's act. Don't leave behind any of those who attacked us last night. It was still early, and the villagers usually didn't go out. In addition, they didn't have enough food, so they spent most of their time lying in bed at home. Several brothers went out with the weapons given by Zhang Yi and began to go door to door to find the people who attacked them yesterday. In the early morning of Gaoyuan village, there was an occasional burst of gunfire. In less than 10 minutes, all those people came back. Frog sat near Gao Tianwu, taking out a recorder from somewhere and rubbing it carefully. Gao Tianwu saw the blood stains on everyone and knew that the matter was over. From now on, we have nothing to do with Gaoyuan village. Gao Tianwu shouted, "Let's go." Xiaoguang's body suddenly began to twist and then fell to the ground. His limbs twisted strangely, and after a moment, he turned into a car. His ability is Autobot, and he was also nicknamed a tool man by everyone. Because Xiaoguang's previous job was a driver, he especially liked cars. Unexpectedly, after awakening his superpowers, he turned himself into a car and let others drive it. "Xiaoguang, can you handle it?" Gao Tianwu looked at the large amount of supplies that had been packed in the backpack and asked Xiaoguang. Xiaoguang replied, "Don't worry, I've had enough to eat and drink, and I'm full of energy now." Everyone stuffed all the supplies into the car and squeezed in. "Let's go." The Xiaoguang car made a rumbling sound, then left Gaoyuan village and drove towards Tianhai City.
Quack.
The big frog jumped out dozens of meters with a bounce and followed the car at the same speed. After they left, the villagers walked out of the house in fear. After discovering that many people were killed, they began to cry and curse Gao Tianwu and others for being inhuman. But these had nothing to do with Gao Tianwu and his brothers. Lacking food and losing their protectors, they could not survive this winter. Chapter 11:02 Chicken Flavor, Crunchy. Gao Tianwu took 7 or 8 brothers and left Gaoyuan village on the Xiaoguang and headed for Tianhai City. That place was once where they yearned for. The brothers had always wanted to go there. They knew that there must be more resources in big cities, which would allow them to survive better. But at that time, the villagers of Gaoyuan village begged Gao Tianwu to stay and protect them. It was Gao Tianwu who chose to stay in Gaoyuan village because of the affection of his fellow countrymen. But now, everything is over, and they no longer have any worries. Moreover, now they are helping Zhang Yi, the king of Tianhai, and can go to Tianhai City openly. Quack, 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 quack. The sound of frogs echoed along the way. Every time it jumped high and then fell gently, the sound echoed throughout the land. The ability of frog call will echo after touching an object. Especially for the search ability of insects, it is very keen. In this way, frogs can find prey in the target area. Gao Tianwu and others followed behind it and found the location of the cockroach group. Everyone came to Aoshan district, a remote place with no people. Everyone got off the car, and Gao Tianwu took out the food and stuffed it into Xiaoguang's mouth, which was at the front of the car. Xiaoguang ate big mouthfuls of food to replenish his energy. Looking at the vast land in front of him, Gao Tianwu's heart surged with a heroic emotion. From now on, we will form a new group. This group is called Wu Men. He pointed to the ground under his feet. We will start from here and lay our foundation. The brothers around him were excited. When they were young, who didn't want to make achievements and make a career? Now it happens to be a troubled time, which is a good time for them to show their fists. Frog is not interested in these things at all. He concentrates on wiping his beloved recorder and then rolls on the snow. Anyway, he has thick skin and flesh, and the cold temperature outside is not a problem for him at all. No matter what time, he is very happy. Seeing this, Gao Tianwu shook his head helplessly. "Frog, did you hear me say so much?" The frog turned his head and looked at him. "Quack. I can hear you. You said there are a lot of food here, right?" Quack, quack, quack. Gao Tianwu looked at the frog's smiling face and felt helpless. "Okay, let's get started. In 10 days, We have to go to every corner of Tianhai City. Others may not be able to do it, but they have Xiaoguang brand cars, so it is not a problem at all. It consumes 2 chicken legs per 100 kilometers, and it also has an automatic driving function. It is natural and pollution-free, and the exhaust gas is still green organic fertilizer. The Woman brothers have all worked in Tianhai City, so they are more familiar with the situation here. The first choice of Aoshan district is because it is a relatively poor area in Tianhai City, where a large number of foreign populations gather, and there is a lot of garbage. Since cockroaches are rampant, it is very likely that this is the origin. Frog, let's get started. Use your flute to attract the cockroach group, Gao Tianwu said to the frog. Quack, okay, no problem. I'll take care of this. Please listen carefully to my beautiful performance. Quack, quack, quack. The frog put the recorder into his mouth and then moved his 6 fingers deftly on the holes of the recorder. He stood on the snow and danced, looking like a gypsy performing on the street. But unexpectedly, the music he played was incomparably beautiful. The melodious tune intoxicated the Woman brothers. The music was melodious and graceful, turning into waves of sound waves, spreading towards the vast snowfield, and also penetrating the thick snow and soil, and entering the underground. Not long after, the surrounding ice surface began to make rustling sounds, which were the sounds caused by cracks in the ice and snow. The next scene made Gao Tianwu and others swallow their saliva. The snowfield, which originally looked pure white, suddenly emerged from under the snow with a large number of black cockroaches, spreading towards this side like a tide. The frog played an elegant tune on its own, not paying any attention to the huge cockroach swarm. The cockroaches also showed a strange state, as if they were immersed in this melodious music and did not attack Gao Tianwu and others. Now, Gao Tianwu jumped up and jumped onto Xiaoguang's car. He opened his arms, and a layer of red light suddenly appeared all over his body. Who? The raging flames burned on his body in an instant. 5-sided Jedi, Maka Jedi, Prajna purifying demonic flame. He formed a diamond-shaped seal with his hands, condensed a hole, and then a large amount of flames gushed out of the hole, rushing straight towards the cockroach tide like a fire dragon. The brothers of Woman took out various prepared weapons, which were all detonators provided by Zhang Yi, and began to attack the cockroach tide. And those cockroaches seemed to have lost consciousness, allowing the people of Woman to attack them without any resistance. This kind of creature that reproduces in large numbers and is dominated by the tribe they have the instinct to eat and reproduce. The frog is their biggest nemesis. His ability, Zerg Nemesis, can easily bewitch these brainless and low IQ insects. The frog jumped and played music on the spot. The music did not stop. The tide of cockroaches that came over became more and more dense, covering the entire land. Gao Tianwu and his brothers tried their best to kill them. For more than half an hour, the whole snowfield was quiet. The black cockroach corpses were densely packed all over the snowfield, which made people's scalps numb. At this time, the frog also stopped playing. Seeing the food all over the ground, he clapped his hands excitedly. Quack, quack, quack. So much food. It smells so good. He opened his mouth wide, and a pink tongue popped out of his mouth, which was 7 or 8 meters long. God knows how this thing is hidden in his mouth. He just rolled it casually on the snow, and a large number of scorched cockroaches entered his mouth. The frogs were eating with such ecstasy that the brothers of Woman felt sick. Is this thing really that delicious? Xiaoguang couldn't help asking, although they had a natural aversion to cockroaches. But after the end of the world, they had tried many things that were not edible, such as mice. Now their stomachs can accommodate many foods. How about, let's try it? Xiao thought about it, walked over, picked up a cockroach, and threw it directly into his mouth. After eating it, he was surprised to find that it tasted pretty good. They didn't know that the 3 major bases in Tianhai City still retain the manufacturing process of cockroach protein. After these cockroaches are roasted, they are actually not much different from chicken legs. Everyone was very tired, so they sat together and really picked up the roasted cockroaches and feasted on them. Cockroaches are really good. If they had appeared earlier, people in the village wouldn't have starved to death. Yeah, come to think of it, how come there are so many of them all of a sudden? What do they eat? A brother stuffed 2 cockroaches into his mouth and asked casually. But this sentence made everyone stop eating. What to eat? What else can they eat? Everyone looked at each other, and the only sound in the air was the frog eating. He seemed to be eating very happily. Fuck, who cares? After just a moment's hesitation, everyone continued to eat. Chapter 11:03 Breaking into the Lair. Gao Tianwu, Frog, and others spent the rest of their time in Tianhai City, killing cockroaches everywhere. With the help of Frog, even if the cockroach group is dozens of meters underground, it will be found accurately by Frog. Then Frog uses his recorder to attract the cockroaches out, and Gao Tianwu and others kill them. The overall coordination is very smooth. Most cockroaches can't resist the temptation of this frog song. They basically don't rest much. Every day, except for sleeping, they are on the way to kill insects. The problem of eating is also easy to solve. Zhang Yi prepared a lot of food for them, but slowly, they actually fell in love with eating hot high-protein cockroach meat. Especially some large cockroaches, which can grow to the size of kittens and puppies, or even as big as a human. They are rich in protein, enough for the people of Wumen to have a good meal. People who stay in hungry conditions for a long time will gradually become numb to food, and even gradually they like this kind of food. All of this was taken in by Zhang Yi. He himself didn't expect that these guys were really so powerful. Especially the frog, he actually played the biggest role in the whole plan. Frogs have restraint on insects, which is quite reasonable, Zhang Yi said. Yang Xinxin said, although they can kill cockroaches, the cockroach problem will not disappear if the culprit cannot be solved. Moreover, with the survival of the fittest of the cockroach tide, the ones that survive are the cockroaches with stronger survival ability, which will only make the situation more and more troublesome. Zhang Yi put his hands together and rubbed his hands slowly, then said lightly, in the worst case, the strength of the cockroach tide will become stronger, and then attack the shelter and the 3 major bases. But this is not a problem for me. My ability cannot actively eliminate a large number of cockroaches, but it is still no problem to defend several bases in Tianhai City. The other party's purpose cannot be just to harass me. There must be other ideas. So, I gave Gao Tianwu and the frog a chance to see if they can create a miracle for me. Don't worry, we just wait quietly. The advantage is mine, Zhang Yi said lightly. Yang Xinxin nodded, but then, a dark luster appeared in her amber pupils. She turned her head and said to Zhang Yi, but brother, I have another idea. If the other party just wants to cause trouble to Tianhai City, it's just a small problem. But if the other party is an unexpected powerful enemy of yours who is here to target you, then should we take the initiative to let them show up? This sentence made Zhang Yi alert all of a sudden. Don't tell me, I really thought of someone. The two looked at each other and said in unison, Gao Chongkong. At the beginning, Gao Chongkong laid out many strategies and played the entire Jiangnan region in his hands. He was just one step away from successfully killing Zhu Zheng and then taking the position. But all that was destroyed by the sudden rise of Zhang Yi. It is impossible to say that Gao Chongkong does not hate Zhang Yi in his heart. And now, there are people who are capable and have no scruples to attack Zhang Yi. After thinking about it, Gao Chongkong is the most suspicious. But Zhang Yi quickly shook his head. If he really has such means, he should go to Zhu Zheng. What's the point of coming to me? Yang Xinxin lowered her head and said in a deep voice, the hatred in people's hearts is immeasurable. Brother, not everyone is like you. Some people will turn their revenge to others because they dare not take action against powerful enemies. Zhang Yi frowned. Gao Chongkong. He was an opponent with a very deep mind, which made Zhang Yi quite afraid. If a person is not patient enough, how can he plan for so long, cover up his inner thoughts, and even completely hide his strength under the eyes of so many people in Jiangnan district? Could it be him? Zhang Yi thought. Yang Xinxin said, whether it is him or not, we still have to be prepared. What if the other party really wants to take revenge on brother through us and the 3 major bases? What can we do if we give him a chance? Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows and seemed to understand Yang Xinxin's thoughts. It sounds interesting. Under the leadership of Gao Tian and Qinghua, the people of Wumen have been working tirelessly to kill the cockroach tide throughout Tianhai City. The ability of Zerg Killer made it very easy for them to eliminate the cockroach tide. In less than 10 days, most of the cockroach tide in Tianhai City was eliminated. Even the insecticide experts in Zhang Yi's family were amazed by this. They said to Zhang Yi, "Perhaps compared to us, these people can solve the problem of cockroach tide better, because we only kill cockroaches through the spread of genetic drugs. But they have the ability to actively search for cockroach tides. In this way, it is possible that they can really find the base camp of the cockroach tide." Zhang Yi, after hearing this, he also agreed deeply. The ability of that frog is indeed very interesting. Apart from other things, in the field of dealing with insects, frogs are epsilon. And this speed of killing insects has caused a headache for the insect master who raises cockroaches under the Shishan base. It takes a lot of time to cultivate a new batch of insects. Even insects like cockroaches must grow up before they can help him create chaos in Tianhai City. However, he did not know what means the other party used to eliminate a large number of insects in a short period of time. If it's just killing insects, it doesn't matter how many times it comes. The insect master held a huge cockroach in his hand, his ugly face twisted, and his eyes were full of fierceness. The reason why I chose cockroaches is because they are the insects with the strongest reproductive ability and the most tenacious vitality. As long as my existence is not discovered, Tianhai City will sooner or later be overwhelmed by the increasingly powerful cockroach swarm. Even if you are Zhang Yi, there is no way to deal with this kind of thing, right? However, the insect master did not know that Gao Tianwu and other martial arts brothers, as well as the frog who called himself Haruki Murakami, had already arrived in Shishan district. Outside the Shishan base, the Xiaoguang brand car was parked far away on the snowfield. Quack, quack. Chapter 1104 Someone Behind the Scenes. They went all the way west from Aoshan district, annihilating many swarms of insects. In the process of moving southwest, they had to pass through Shishan district. This place is now an abandoned land, and it looks even more desolate due to the lack of human activities. Gao Tianwu deduced that there might be a large number of cockroaches underground here. They just wanted to clean it up in order. But unexpectedly, when the frog was exploring here, the smile on his face, which always had a bright smile, suddenly froze. Rarely, the corners of his mouth sank, and his expression became cautious. Gao Tianwu noticed something was wrong and asked quickly, "What's wrong?"
Quack.
"I feel something unusual here." The frog's eyes moved down and looked at his feet. The huge paw stepped on the snow. Quack. "There are a very terrifying number of insects hidden under here. And there are many terrifying big guys." He glanced at Gao Tianwu. "Maybe we have found the cockroach nest." Gao Tianwu was stunned for a moment, and then said with surprise, "Great. After searching everywhere, it is easy to find. In this way, we don't have to go through the whole Tianhai City to find them." The frog said to Gao Tianwu, "But do you remember what Mr. Zhang said to you before he left?" Quack. Gao Tianwu certainly remembered. Zhang Yi had reminded them that there might be aliens behind the cockroach tide. So Zhang Yi left a communication device for Gao Tianwu. Once the track of alien activities is found, immediately notify Zhang Yi to come and deal with it. After all, since the enemy in the dark dared to attack Zhang Yi, his strength must not be underestimated. Gao Tianwu clenched his fists and suddenly raised his head to look at the frog, and said with a firm look, "No, this problem must be solved by us." Frog quack. He spread his huge flippers helplessly. "Xiao Wu, if we really find the cockroach nest, then our mission is complete. There is no need to continue taking risks." Gao Tianwu shook his head. "I don't think so. If I just find the cockroach nest, I will get some rewards from that person at most. But what I want is not just that. I want to take my brothers and take root in Tianhai City. Then I must get the recognition of Mr. Zhang. So, I have to seize this opportunity to prove the strength of our brothers. Only by showing our own value will people have a reason to accept us. I have to consider whether this is my only chance in this life. Gao Tianwu's impassioned speech infected the frog, who was originally a little retreating. His brothers and others behind him have already picked up their weapons and are ready to have a life-and-death battle. The frog stared at Gao Tianwu. Gao Tianwu also stared at the frog. "Old friend, please help me again."
Quack.
The frog nodded, then turned and leaped forward. It landed on its four webbed feet, took a deep breath, and then swelled up. Then, a louder frog croak instantly resounded throughout the snowfield. Quack, quack,
Quack.
The frog croaks penetrated the earth and reached the underground of the Shishan base, constantly echoing in the ruins. After hearing this sound, all the cockroaches turned around collectively and crawled outside as if they were possessed. The ugly insect master was startled, and then a fierce look appeared on his face. "Have I been found?" Outside the Shishan base, the frog's frog croak kept echoing. This is a declaration of war. They naturally would not go into the underground to fight, but if the other party did not come out, then the frog's Zerg nemesis would directly destroy almost all the mutant cockroaches underground. The expressions of the Gao Tianwu brothers were as stern as steel. At this time, they were ready to fight, even ready to sacrifice. In order to stand out and fight for a future, the only thing they can bet on is their lives. If they win, they will be rich and prosperous. If they lose, they will just die. After the end of the world, many of them who are used to life and death are not so afraid of death. They are just afraid of dying without any meaning. Boom! There were bursts of roars from under the earth. The thick snow layer broke into pieces, and then a tide of cockroaches emerged like a tide. Densely packed, like opening the floodgates to release a long-accumulated flood. This is the cockroach's nest and the experimental base of the ugly insect master. So here are the father and mother of the source of the mutant cockroaches in Tianhai City. They are even bigger and more terrifying, with palm-sized cockroaches all over the ground. The frog raised the recorder and began to dance and play. With the blessing of the recorder, its frog-calling ability can spread farther. The cockroaches surrounded everyone, but did not attack. Instead, they lay quietly on the ground like possessed, listening to the frog's music. Go! Gao Tianwu struck with both hands, and red flames flowed over his body. He pushed his palms forward, and one after another, flames the size of a human head fell into the cockroach group. Soon, the cockroach group was burning. They were all high-protein creatures, very easy to burn, and a large area would be burned. They were too experienced in this way of dealing with it. When ordinary cockroaches met frogs, they really met their natural enemies and had no ability to resist until they died. But Gao Tianwu also knew that things were not that simple. If this is really a cockroach nest, then there must be more difficult guys to deal with. Gao Tianwu looked around cautiously. Suddenly, the frog opened his eyes that were intoxicated by the music. He looked in a certain direction, his eyes became sharp, and then he winked at Gao Tianwu. Gao Tianwu understood and looked over immediately. It was a mountain covered with heavy snow. Suddenly, there was a burst of explosions from the inside of the mountain, and large areas of snow began to avalanche and collapse. Behind the collapsed snow, a large shadow slowly appeared. Snow was flying all over the sky, and those shadows began to slowly approach Gao Tianwu and others. After the snowflakes fell, their shadows were revealed. It was a weird man with a hideous face like a demon. His face had dislocated features, as if it was randomly pieced together. His hunched body was skinny, but his eyes were disgusting yellow and white. He was like a human-shaped cockroach, staring at Gao Tianwu and others, making Gao Tianwu and his brothers a little scared. Sure enough, what Mr. Zhang said is right. There really is a mastermind behind this. Chapter 11:05 Fighting for a Future. The ugly insect master, the mastermind behind the cockroach tide in Tianhai City, finally appeared. No one knew who he was because his facial features had lost their human appearance. But Gao Tianwu and others knew that he was very dangerous, because around him, there were dozens of giant cockroaches 2 or 3 meters long. These things were things they had never encountered before. The carapace of each cockroach was a disgusting feces yellow, and there were huge wings on its back. Xiao Guangren was a little dazed. Such a big cockroach. How much kitchen waste must it eat? Gao Tianwu said in a deep voice. Kill it. The insect master sneered. He, I thought it was Zhang Yi who came, but it turned out to be a little punk. Then all of them will die here and be fertilizer for my babies. As soon as he finished speaking, the dozens of cockroaches around him jumped up suddenly and rushed towards Gao Tianwu and others like a cannonball. Gao Tianwu roared, put his hands together, and a layer of golden light appeared all over his body. The next moment, his body was like a Buddha statue in a temple, with a solemn appearance and skin that turned into the golden color of the Buddha statue. When Gao Tianwu was 8 years old, his parents took him to Shaoshi Mountain to worship Buddha. At that time, a monk told his parents that he was born with a predestined relationship with Buddha. Since then, although he has not entered Buddhism, he firmly believes in Zen Buddhism. Buddhism is a concept that can penetrate people's hearts. The power of faith made him start to move closer to the realm of Buddha after his supernatural powers were born. Just like his ability, 5 directions, Jiedi, it originated from the guardian god of Buddhism. Golden light, Jiedi. Gao Tianwu was covered with golden light. Facing the monsters flying over, he jumped up and directly met them. The brothers of women behind him did not relax either. They roared and pulled the trigger, shooting at them with the rifles in their hands. The frequency of the frog playing the recorder began to increase. Although the power of Zerg Nemesis could not completely suppress these mutated giant cockroaches, it could also have a certain impact, which greatly restricted their mobility. Gao Tianwu relied on the Buddha's light to protect his body and fought with those giant cockroaches in close combat. Xiaoguang was even more direct. After transforming into a car, he started the accelerator with a boom and directly hit a cockroach with his thick skin and flesh. Gao Tianwu's fist hit a cockroach and immediately knocked the 2-meter-tall cockroach 4 or 5 meters away, rolling several times in the snow. But the defense and vitality of this creature were too strong. It soon stood up, fluttered its wings, and rushed towards Gao Tianwu again. Soon, he was surrounded by a large group of cockroaches in the middle. Gao Tianwu's face did not show any fear. Since he dared to deal with these cockroaches, he was well prepared. He took out a bottle of strong liquor from his arms and drank it, then opened his mouth and sprayed a raging flame. Makajiti, Prajna, purifying demonic flame. Insects are most afraid of flames.
This is their nature.
As soon as Gao Tianwu's flame came out, the surrounding cockroaches were frightened and retreated. Brother, I'm coming. Xiao Guang boomed with exhaust gas and then rushed to the battlefield. He flew into the air, the trunk opened automatically, and then more than a dozen plastic barrels fell out of it. The plastic barrels fell on the hard ground and popped. It broke directly, and the gasoline inside splashed everywhere. Those cockroaches were inevitably splashed. Gao Tianwu took the opportunity to release the flames, and his right fist slammed into the ground. Suddenly, a fire dragon rushed straight to the cockroaches along the traces of gasoline.
Who?
The raging fire suddenly rose, and a group of cockroaches were wrapped in the fire and lost control. Fear of fire is their instinct. For a while, dozens of giant cockroaches did not dare to attack Gao Tianwu and others, but chose to hide instead. This scene made the insect master very angry. But after all, they are low-level creatures. It is impossible to expect them to be able to reproduce, have no brains, and have strong combat capabilities, right? He turned his eyes and found the problem. On the surface, Gao Tianwu and others are the main force of the battle. In fact, the one who had the greatest impact on the cockroach tide was the frog. If he could be killed, the cockroach tide would not be affected, and Gao Tianwu and others would definitely die. The insect master opened his mouth and made the sound of insects. After receiving the order, 5 or 6 giant cockroaches immediately flew towards the frogs. Seeing this, the frog had to stop playing.
Quack.
Do insects want to prey on frogs? Facing the attack of the giant cockroaches, he directly stepped forward to meet them. The huge claw blade of the cockroach stabbed at the frog, but the frog's snow-white belly hit it without dodging. Not only did it not suffer any damage, but the cockroach was violently bounced dozens of meters away. It spit out its long tongue and swung it like a long whip. The mucus attached to the tongue quickly stuck the other giant cockroaches together and turned them into a cockroach ball.
Quack.
Frogs just don't like fighting, but they won't lose against insects. The frog patted his belly and laughed happily.
Frogs are pacifists.
But it doesn't mean he is not strong. If that were the case, how could Gao Tianwu be so polite to him and offer him food to build closer relations? The insect master's expression darkened at this time. He had already felt that something seemed to be wrong. But what could he do? He was just an insect master, and his ability was to control insects and promote the evolution of insect swarms. But he couldn't fight by himself. In order to create big trouble for Tianhai City, he chose cockroaches as the receptor. However, he didn't expect to encounter frogs as his nemesis. Damn it, all of you die. The insect master roared, took out a knife, and slowly cut his wrist. He was skinny and the blood that flowed out was green. The giant cockroaches around him smelled the blood and quickly surrounded him. After the insect master fed his blood to the cockroaches, blood suddenly appeared in their eyes.
Squeak.
The cockroaches made fierce chirping sounds. Gao Tianwu and others looked gloomy, knowing that the other party was going to fight to the death. Come on, let's take you down in one go. Zhang Yi is never stingy with the people around him, especially those who can help him. So this time, he gave Gao Tianwu and others enough weapons and equipment. Not only ordinary weapons and ammunition. There are also flamethrowers specifically for dealing with cockroach swarms and special grenades that can cause large-scale damage. These young men from Wumen were fearless and rushed forward with their weapons to fight those mutant cockroaches. The frog side, frogs don't like to fight, but these big bugs look delicious. I'll just stock up some food and wait for spring.
Quack.
Thanks for staying tuned. More will come soon. Please subscribe if not already.